Welcome to Cat Town. It looks busy and productive, but leave an unregulated market alone and severe imbalances naturally emerge. Some feline residents amass massive piles of fish, while others go hungry. The town starts running up massive debts buying premium yarn from neighboring cities, and the local fish ponds are entirely fished out. To fix this, the mayor has to step in. A government intervenes using macroeconomic aims, large, overarching goals designed to correct these exact market failures. Without this active steering, those initial imbalances in trade and wealth can grow until domestic industry stalls and the town's living standards begin to fall. Correcting these trends is the core mission of any government's economic policy. In your exam syllabus, you'll see 5 main macroeconomic aims listed. Today, we are going to dive deep into 3 specific targets that frequently pop up on test day. Understanding how a government approaches these 3 goals gives you the foundation to evaluate whether their overall economic policy is actually succeeding or failing. Let's look at Cat Town's international trade. They export cheap, basic goods, like generic scratching posts, but they import massive amounts of high-end, expensive mechanical mice. When you consistently buy more value from the rest of the world than you sell to them, you run a massive deficit. That imbalance drains local wealth and eventually forces domestic factories to shed jobs. For your exam, you need the textbook definition. The balance of payments is a financial record of a country's transactions with the rest of the world for a given time period, usually 1 year. Maintaining stability here means ensuring those international transactions balance out over time, keeping enough wealth inside the country to support a healthy domestic economy. Back inside the town limits, we hit the inequality problem. A tiny fraction of the population holds almost all the wealth, leaving a large portion struggling to afford basic necessities. The primary tool governments use is progressive taxation. This chart shows how it works. As income moves into higher tiers, the tax percentage increases. The government then takes that revenue from highest earners to fund essential public services for lower income groups. By narrowing the gap between the richest and poorest members of society, this system aims to alleviate absolute poverty and ensure that every citizen has access to essential services and basic necessities. Finally, we have to look at the physical environment. Extracting and consuming every available resource right now might generate wealth today, but it destroys the ability of future generations to survive. So, governments aim for sustainable development. This means meeting our present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. These policies don't happen in a vacuum. They are guided by international standards, like the Sustainable Development Goals drafted by the United Nations Assembly. Of course, governments have to decide which of these macroeconomic aims to tackle first. They usually prioritize based on the sheer scale of a specific problem and the current level of concern from their citizens. If short-term economic activity irreparably damages the physical environment, long-term economic growth simply cannot happen. In a perfectly managed economy, businesses are internationally competitive, wealth is distributed fairly, and resources are managed sustainably. But achieving all of those goals at the exact same time is practically impossible. Macroeconomic policies naturally conflict with one another, forcing a trade-off. Nobel Prize-winning economist Jan Tinbergen pointed out that to solve multiple economic problems, a government needs to use a distinct, separate policy measure for each individual objective. For example, if you heavily tax the wealthy to redistribute income, business owners might decide to relocate to a neighboring town. That exodus of capital negatively impacts your balance of payments. Here is your final exam tip. To score high marks, you need to actively evaluate these exact trade-offs. Show how achieving one specific macroeconomic aim might accidentally damage another. Effective government economic intervention requires juggling these constantly competing priorities to keep the whole system running.